This is over the Lebanon-Israel border, and both sides have said the other has violated the terms.
The ancient stones of the Temple Mount have seen centuries of turmoil and bloodshed. From the clinging of steel in the Crusader era to the horrors of war in the 21st century, the Holy Land has seen violence in every day and age. But a quiet storm is brewing, like nothing before, one that may ripple far beyond the bounds of history and politics. Recent developments on this sacred site have left observers at the crossroads of intrigue and prophecy, as long-held traditions are challenged and new possibilities arise. While the days go by as usual for most, those who believe in ancient prophecies understand that something shocking has just happened on the Temple Mount. The signs of redemption are here. So what does that mean for our world and humankind as a whole? Let's start with some historical context. The Temple Mount and the Holy Land through the centuries. The Holy Land, revered by the Jews, Christians and Muslims alike, is yet again caught in turmoil and conflict. As the sounds of explosions, gunshots, and the wailing of women and children echo through the conflict-torn zone, one can only hope for a better tomorrow. A future where the land sees consistent peace and devotees can all call it their home. The Temple Mount, known in Hebrew as Har Habayit and in Arabic as Haram al-Sharif or the Noble Sanctuary, stands as a silent witness to the current turmoil and all that has befallen the people of the Holy Land for centuries before. It is one of the most contested and revered sites in human history. Nestled in the heart of Jerusalem's Old City, this sacred hill has been a focal point for Judaism, Christianity, and Islam for thousands of years. Its present form, a sprawling flat plaza framed by the monumental Western Wall and ancient gates, serves as a powerful symbol of faith and a crucible for the enduring tensions of the modern era. So what is it that has happened now that we can finally see signs of the end times? Before we go there, let's take a walk through history. Historically, the Temple Mount gained prominence in Jewish tradition as the site of the first and second temples. According to biblical accounts, King Solomon constructed the first temple around 957 BC, which the Babylonians destroyed in 587 BC. The Second Temple, rebuilt in 516 BC and later expanded under King Herod, stood until its destruction by the Romans in 70 AD. For Jews, this location remains the holiest site on earth, believed to house the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctum of the temple where the divine presence resided. To this day, Jewish prayers are directed toward the Mount, and Orthodox tradition holds that the Third Temple will rise here with the coming of the Messiah. For Muslims, the Temple Mount holds profound significance as the location of the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, home to the iconic Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. This site is revered as Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, or the furthest mosque, and is the third holiest place in Islam after Mecca and Medina. It is associated with the Prophet Muhammad's Isra and Miraj, his miraculous night journey and ascension to heaven. As the first Qibla, or direction of prayer in Islam, it remains central to Muslim worship and identity. The compound, with its expansive courtyard capable of hosting over 400,000 worshippers, serves as both a spiritual sanctuary and a powerful symbol of Palestinian national identity. This also goes for Palestinian Christians. For them, the Al-Aqsa Mosque is a vital part of Jerusalem's sacred geography, which includes numerous Christian sites such as the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Via Dolorosa. As part of the Old City of Jerusalem, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the mosque symbolizes a shared heritage that dates back centuries. Al-Aqsa is an integral element of Jerusalem's status as a holy city for the three Abrahamic religions, and it serves as a cultural and historical landmark that underscores the deep-rooted connection of Palestinians, Muslim and Christian alike, to the land. The Temple Mount's remarkable structures reflect the layered histories of the people who have venerated it. The Dome of the Rock, completed in 692 AD under the Umayyad Caliphate, is one of the oldest surviving Islamic monuments, with its gilded dome symbolizing Islamic architectural and spiritual grandeur. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, also dating back to early Islamic rule, embodies centuries of religious devotion and has undergone numerous restorations and expansions. Surrounding the compound are Herodian retaining walls and gates, Byzantine and Ottoman additions, and Mamluk-era porticos, bearing witness to the diverse civilizations that have shaped the Mount's physical and cultural landscape. The site's modern history has been shaped by conflict and compromise. Managed by the Jerusalem Islamic Waqf under Jordanian custodianship, the Temple Mount came under Israeli control after the Six-Day War in 1967. Despite maintaining administrative oversight, the Waqf operates within a delicate framework known as the status quo, whereby Israel enforces security and restricts non-Muslim prayer on the Mount. This arrangement underscores the site's role as a flashpoint in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For both Israelis and Palestinians, the Mount symbolizes broader struggles over sovereignty, identity, and heritage. Today, the Temple Mount is not merely a historical relic, but a living testament to the enduring power of faith and the complexities of coexistence. Its golden dome gleams above the city, reminding the world of its sacredness and the profound challenges of reconciling its diverse legacies. As one of humanity's most treasured and contentious places, the Temple Mount continues to bridge the ancient and modern worlds in a shared yet deeply divided history. The Temple Mount and the End Times. In Jewish eschatology, the rebuilding of the Third Temple on the Temple Mount is a central event preceding the Messianic Age. This temple would serve as a renewed center for worship, sacrifices, and the divine presence. Increased Jewish prayer on the Mount is viewed by some as a preparatory step toward reclaiming the site for this purpose. Jewish tradition holds that the rebuilding of the temple is closely associated with the coming of the Messiah, who will restore Israel to its former glory and bring about global peace. In Christian eschatology, particularly as described in the Book of Daniel and the Gospel of Matthew, the temple is central to the events of the end times. Many Christians interpret the rebuilding of the Third Temple as a precursor to the abomination of desolation, when the Antichrist will desecrate the temple, marking the beginning of the Great Tribulation. After this period of tribulation, Christians believe that Jesus Christ will return, bringing judgment and establishing God's eternal kingdom. In Islamic eschatology, the Al-Aqsa Mosque plays a key role in the end times. It is associated with the Mahdi, a prophesied savior figure, and the return of Jesus Christ, who will defeat the Antichrist or Dajjal and establish justice. Any perceived threat to Al-Aqsa's status is viewed by many Muslims as a sign of the approaching end times. So how come the end times are drawing near? Well, the Third Temple is about to be built, and with it, these prophecies will be put to the test. The role of the Temple Institute. The Temple Institute, or Mashon Hamikdash in Hebrew, is dedicated to the study, preparation, and eventual rebuilding of the Third Temple in Jerusalem. But it goes beyond that. The organization seeks to rekindle ancient traditions described in the Hebrew Bible and Jewish legal texts. Situated in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem's Old City, the Institute operates with a dual focus: meticulous research into the design and rituals of the two historical temples, and the practical development of objects and plans for the Third Temple. Founded by Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, a prominent figure in the study of temple practices, the Temple Institute has grown into a major force advocating for the reinstatement of korbanot, or sacrificial offerings, and other rites central to ancient Jewish worship. Under the leadership of Director General David Schwartz, the Institute has secured funding from diverse sources, including private benefactors such as New York billionaire Henry Sweeker, as well as from the Israeli government. Central to the Institute's activities is the creation of ritual items for use in a rebuilt temple. To date, the Institute has crafted over 90 objects, all meticulously designed to meet the requirements of Jewish law. Among these are the sacred vessels, silver trumpets, and the seven-branched menorah, each modeled after descriptions in the Torah and other historical sources. These items are intended for actual use in temple worship when circumstances allow for its reconstruction. One of the Institute's most ambitious undertakings has been the recreation of the garments worn by the Kohen Gadol, or the high priest, and other priests. This project has produced items such as the Hoshen, or breastplate, adorned with 12 gemstones representing the tribes of Israel, and the ephod, a richly embroidered apron-like garment. In 2007, the tzitz, a golden crown bearing the inscription "Holy to the Lord," was completed, exemplifying the Institute's commitment to detail and authenticity. Additionally, garments for the lay priests, the Kohanim, have been designed and are available for purchase by people who trace their lineage to the priestly class. The Institute has also delved into the musical traditions of temple worship, training Levite singers to perform the psalms and hymns that once resounded in the temple courts. Silver trumpets, instruments specifically described for ceremonial use on the Temple Mount, have been crafted to accompany these songs. Beyond its focus on ritual objects, the Temple Institute operates a museum in the Jewish Quarter that showcases reconstructed items, including the menorah, priestly garments, and vessels. It also allows visitors to learn about the religious, historical, and prophetic significance of the temple. However, there is a problem with all of this. As noted earlier, the Temple Mount, the intended site for the Third Temple, is currently home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, two of Islam's holiest sites. This reality places the Institute's aspirations at the heart of one of the most sensitive religious and political disputes in the world. While the Institute emphasizes that its efforts are focused on readiness and education, its goals have been met with criticism from various quarters. Despite the challenges, the Temple Institute remains unwavering in its mission, and one of the ways they demonstrate this is by finding the red heifer, bringing back the red heifer. The Temple Institute's pursuit of the para aduma, or the red heifer, is among its most intricate and symbolic endeavors, deeply rooted in Jewish law and tradition. This rare animal is essential for the purification or tahara rituals required to sanctify individuals entering the temple sanctuary. The ashes of a red heifer, when mixed with water, hold a unique status in Jewish law, as they are the only means of purifying someone who has come into contact with a corpse, an impurity that prevents participation in temple rituals. Without this purification, rebuilding and functioning within a future temple remains spiritually incomplete. The red heifer holds a profound place in Jewish thought, symbolizing ultimate purity and divine mystery. According to the Torah, the ashes of the red heifer have the paradoxical property of purifying the impure, while rendering those involved in its preparation temporarily impure. Rabbis have deemed this paradox as a decree beyond human understanding, representing absolute submission to divine will. For a red heifer to qualify, it must meet extremely stringent criteria. The animal must be entirely red, with no more than 2 non-red hairs and free from blemishes or defects. Furthermore, it must not have been subjected to any form of labor, including carrying a yoke or pulling a plow. Given the rarity of such a heifer and the meticulous care required to ensure it remains unblemished, the search for a suitable candidate is both a logistical and spiritual challenge. The Temple Institute has long been engaged in identifying and raising potential candidates for the red heifer. In the 1990s and early 2000s, the Institute identified 2 prospective red heifers. These animals initially appeared to meet the qualifications and were declared kosher. However, as the animals matured, small changes in pigmentation or the discovery of minor blemishes rendered them unsuitable for the purification ritual. In September 2022, the Temple Institute achieved a significant breakthrough when 5 unblemished red heifers were brought to Israel from the United States. This was no small feat because the genetic traits required for a completely red coat with no blemishes are rare in cattle. Breeding for these specific traits without genetic manipulation was historically a matter of chance. Moreover, as cattle were bred for specific agricultural purposes, traits like a completely red coat became less common. The additional requirements of Jewish law, no blemishes, no labor, further narrowed the pool of potential candidates. While red-colored cattle exist, finding one that meets the precise standards has been challenging for centuries, leading to a perception that the red heifer was extinct. The Temple Institute, recognizing the importance of the red heifer for the purification rituals necessary for the rebuilding of the temple, worked with ranchers, particularly in the United States, where red cattle breeds such as Red Angus are relatively common. They educated ranchers about the specific requirements for a red heifer under Jewish law. Selective breeding played a crucial role in increasing the likelihood of producing red heifers. Ranchers carefully paired cattle with genetic predispositions for red coats, enhancing the chances of producing qualifying offspring. modern genetic screening techniques may also have been used to identify and preserve red-coated cattle and produce kosher offspring. Upon arrival in Israel, the heifers were meticulously inspected by rabbis and were found to meet all halakhic qualifications. This marked a historic moment, as the presence of multiple potential candidates greatly increased the likelihood of successfully performing the purification rites if the conditions for rebuilding the temple were met. The heifers are now being carefully nurtured under strict supervision to ensure they remain unblemished. Special care is taken to protect them from injuries, blemishes, or any activity that could disqualify them. This process is vital, as even a minor change in their condition could render them unsuitable for use. The successful identification and preparation of a kosher red heifer have profound implications for the Jewish world and beyond. The ashes of the red heifer are a prerequisite for the restoration of temple worship, making this step essential for those who aspire to see the third temple built. Moreover, the presence of multiple qualified red heifers could provide a supply of ashes sufficient for generations. For many, the search for the red heifer represents a tangible step toward the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and the ultimate redemption envisioned in Jewish eschatology. At the same time, it serves as a reminder of the meticulous and reverent approach required to adhere to divine commandments, even in the modern era. So, when are they rebuilding the third temple? Rebuilding the third temple. The dream of rebuilding the third temple in Jerusalem has captivated Orthodox Judaism for centuries, and within this broader aspiration, a contentious debate exists regarding how the temple should be rebuilt. The Temple Institute, which plays a central role in this movement, holds a specific interpretation of Jewish law and tradition regarding the construction of the temple, particularly as it relates to the views of one of Judaism's most prominent legal scholars, Rabbi Moses Maimonides, or Rambam. The Temple Institute bases much of its ideology on an interpretation of Rambam's writings, particularly from his work Mishneh Torah, in which he suggests that the rebuilding of the temple is not only a prophecy but also a human responsibility. According to the Temple Institute, Rambam's philosophy implies that if the conditions are right, Jews are obligated to attempt to rebuild the temple by their own efforts, and that this is considered a mitzvah or a commandment that is essential to fulfilling divine will. However, this interpretation of Rambam is not universally accepted by all scholars, leading to a significant debate within Orthodox Judaism. One of the main points of contention is whether Rambam indeed advocated for human agency in the construction of the temple, or whether he emphasized that this task should only be undertaken with the direct intervention of the Messiah. According to some scholars, Rambam's writings are far more ambiguous on this point than the Temple Institute's reading suggests. Rabbi Yom Tov Lipman Heller, a prominent 17th century rabbi and scholar, whose commentary on Tractate Yoma directly addresses this issue, argues that Rambam never intended for Jews to actively seek to build the temple before the arrival of the Messiah. Instead, Heller interprets Rambam's position as one that places the construction of the temple firmly in the realm of divine providence. In this view, the temple will be rebuilt when the Messiah comes, and until then, any human effort to rebuild it prematurely would be misguided and even potentially sacrilegious. Heller's stance highlights the traditional understanding within Jewish law that the temple is a divinely ordained structure, and only through the coming of the Messiah can the necessary conditions for its construction be met. Thus, there exists a divide within Orthodox Judaism. On one side, the Temple Institute and its supporters interpret Rambam as advocating for proactive human efforts to rebuild the temple. On the other, traditionalists and some scholars argue that only divine intervention should initiate such a monumental event. Then there's also a debate over whether it is permissible for Jews to ascend the Temple Mount. According to Jewish law, the Temple Mount is a sacred site, with particular emphasis on the Holy of Holies, which remains off-limits under most circumstances. The Temple Institute, however, holds that it is permissible under certain conditions for Jews to ascend parts of the Temple Mount. This practice, known as aliyah, or making a pilgrimage, is seen by the Institute as a way of fulfilling the biblical commandment of visiting the Temple Mount, which is believed to be necessary for the future rebuilding of the temple. According to the Temple Institute's understanding, these pilgrimages are conducted in full compliance with Jewish law or halakha to ensure that the ascenders do not violate any sacred zones and avoid desecrating the holy areas. However, many rabbis oppose Jewish visits to the Temple Mount due to the grave concern that, in the absence of the temple and its rituals, a Jew may accidentally enter a forbidden area, thereby desecrating the sanctity of the space. To prevent such violations, many rabbis have outright prohibited visiting the Mount, maintaining that only after the Messiah arrives and the temple is rebuilt can Jews safely enter the area in accordance with religious law. Today, the Orthodox Jews remain divided on the matter. At the heart of these theological discussions is the question of how human agency interacts with divine will. Should Jews passively wait for the Messiah to bring about the temple's reconstruction, or should they take active steps to fulfill the mitzvah and bring the temple into being through their efforts? As the Temple Institute continues its work, this disagreement highlights the diversity of opinion within the Orthodox community and the broader Jewish world regarding the role of human action in bringing about the redemption of the Jewish people. Whether through active participation or through patient waiting, the issue remains one of profound significance in Jewish thought and practice. But signs of redemption have appeared. A kohen sighted on the Temple Mount now comes the part where we discuss the latest sign of end times and the return of Jesus Christ, as per Christian and Muslim eschatology. For the first time in 2 millennia, a kohen, or a male descendant of Aaron, the high priest of biblical times, ascended the Temple Mount adorned in meticulously crafted priestly garments, as prescribed in the Torah. Here, the kohen participated in a prayer quorum or minyan, delivering the priestly blessing or birkat kohanim to those gathered at the site. The garments worn by the kohen were prepared by the Temple Institute. The design and crafting of these garments required years of dedicated research and expertise, ensuring strict adherence to biblical descriptions and halakhic or Jewish legal standards. This effort aligns with the Institute's broader mission to lay the groundwork for the eventual rebuilding of the Third Temple. Despite this spiritual accomplishment, it occurred against a backdrop of significant challenges. Extra-legal restrictions imposed by authorities, aimed at maintaining the sensitive status quo on the Temple Mount, have long limited Jewish prayer and rituals at the site. Although the Israeli Supreme Court has upheld the right of Jews to pray on the Temple Mount, these rulings are inconsistently enforced. However, the event witnessed on this occasion was extraordinary. Jews prayed openly, forming multiple minyanim, in an unprecedented assertion of their religious rights. Other recent acts of Jewish worship on the Temple Mount underscore a growing momentum among Jewish communities to reclaim the site's sacred traditions. During Rosh Hashanah, a group of Jews secretly brought shofarot, or ritual ram's horns, to the mount and successfully performed all required blasts. Similarly, acts such as prostrating themselves on the sacred stones of the mount and donning tefillin or phylacteries have begun to re-emerge, signaling a shift in religious expression at this highly contested location. The priestly garments, which played a central role in this historic event, are categorized into 3 distinct types. Firstly, the ordinary priestly garments, or bigdai kehuna, are worn by regular kohanim and include a tunic, trousers, a sash, and a head covering. Each piece symbolizes purity and devotion, essential for the service of God. The high priest's attire, or bigdai kohen gadol, is more elaborate, incorporating 8 garments, including the ephod, an apron-like garment, the hoshen, a breastplate with 12 gemstones representing the tribes of Israel, and the tzitz, a golden crown inscribed with "Holy to the Lord." The sacred linen garments, or bigdai lavan, were worn by the high priest during specific rituals, such as the Yom Kippur service. Their simple white design signifies purity and humility. The open expression of Jewish prayer and the re-emergence of priestly traditions on the Temple Mount are viewed by many as harbingers of the Messianic era, in which the Third Temple is prophesied to be rebuilt. For adherents, these events signify progress toward fulfilling the vision of the prophet Isaiah, who proclaimed, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations." However, these actions also intensify debates over the Mount's future. For some, They represent a reclaiming of Jewish heritage and rights. For others, they exacerbate tensions and fears of altering the fragile status quo. As Jewish worship on the Temple Mount continues to evolve, it brings with it profound questions about faith, identity, and the unfolding of history. But as we draw closer to the rebuilding of the temple, what does that mean for the world and the future of humankind as a whole? Well, the Christian faith has a very clear view on this matter. The end times draw closer prophecies in both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament emphasize the importance of the temple, viewing its restoration as a precursor to apocalyptic events that will culminate in divine judgment and ultimate redemption. The temple occupies a central position in prophetic texts related to the end times. For instance, Daniel 9:27 describes the Antichrist's covenant and desecration of the temple. The book of Daniel describes a figure who will establish a covenant with many for a week, only to desecrate the temple by halting sacrifices and placing an abomination of desolation within it. This act of sacrilege signals the beginning of unparalleled tribulation, marking a critical moment in the prophetic timeline. Revelation 13 predicts the enforcement of worship by the Antichrist. The Antichrist, empowered by Satan, will enforce global worship through the construction of an image within the temple. This image, endowed with the ability to speak, will become a tool of coercion, demonstrating the temple's role as a stage for this climactic spiritual battle. Matthew 24 tells us about Jesus' warning about the abomination of desolation. Here, Jesus references Daniel's prophecy in his Olivet Discourse, cautioning believers about the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place. This warning links the desecration of the temple to the onset of the Great Tribulation, a period of unprecedented suffering leading up to the end of the age. For these prophecies to manifest, the existence of a physical Jewish temple is widely regarded as essential. The temple, with its sacrificial rites and sanctified precincts, serves as the setting for these foretold events. Its absence has driven movements like the Temple Institute to prepare for its rebuilding, including crafting sacred vessels, priestly garments, and architectural blueprints, further fueling speculation about the prophetic timeline's advancement. However, until the status quo holds, rebuilding the Third Temple will not be possible. Moreover, Orthodox Jews believe that trying to do so before the arrival of the Messiah will be an abomination, an act of betrayal against God. But in all practical sense, parties like the Temple Institute must balance religious aspirations with political sensitivities. For many devout Jews, the rebuilding of the temple is not merely a national goal, but a divine imperative tied to messianic redemption. Conversely, the political ramifications of such a project make its realization fraught with challenges. The Temple Mount's status as a flashpoint in Israeli-Palestinian relations further complicates the issue. While some Jews quietly ascend the Mount for prayer, often under heavy police scrutiny, these acts are seen by others as provocations threatening to ignite larger conflicts. Amid this, Jewish groups persist in their preparations, interpreting every step forward as a fulfillment of divine prophecy. The developments surrounding the Temple Mount, from increased Jewish prayer to international debates, are seen by many as aligning with end times prophecies. These events resonate deeply with eschatological themes, reflecting the tension between humanity's spiritual aspirations and the constraints of temporal power. For believers in biblical prophecy, these unfolding dynamics signal that the world may be edging closer to the dramatic culmination described in the sacred texts. According to Christian tradition, once the temple is built, a global leader, often called the Antichrist, will emerge. He will forge a deceptive peace, possibly related to a covenant with Israel. As part of his reign, he will desecrate the rebuilt Jewish temple and claim divine status. Following this comes the Great Tribulation, a period of intense suffering and persecution lasting 7 years, often divided into two halves. This time will be characterized by global wars, natural disasters, economic collapse, and widespread spiritual deception. There will be a system of enforced worship in which individuals must bear the mark of the beast to buy or sell. This system will be controlled by the Antichrist and his false prophet. At the climax of these events, Jesus will return to defeat the Antichrist and establish his millennial kingdom, a 1,000-year reign of peace and justice. This return is often associated with the Battle of Armageddon. After the millennium, Christian prophecy describes the final judgment, the destruction of the current heavens and earth, and the creation of a new, eternal order where God dwells with his people. However, in Jewish eschatology, the focus is on the coming of the Messiah, who will oversee the rebuilding of the Third Temple in Jerusalem, restoring temple worship and sacrifices as prescribed in the Torah. Following this, the Messiah will gather the exiles and establish world peace. Lastly, there will be a day of judgment, accompanied by the resurrection of the righteous. The wicked may face punishment, but the focus is more on the collective restoration of Israel and humanity than on individual salvation. As that time draws closer, one can only prepare in anticipation. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.